Hello everybody and welcome to Forever Sports. And World Rugby have officially announced the 2025 Dream Team with 6 Springboks featuring in the 15, which is obviously going to create a lot of talk and a lot of controversy with the picks, because there's always going to be people who believe that certain players have been picked over the others. And I think there are a couple of definite players who will feel very hard done by in the Dream Team, and a couple of surprise selections as well. From South Africa's perspective, Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu getting the nod as the number 10 in the world this year. It's probably a bit of a shock ahead of the likes of a Finn Russell, for example, who has probably been the best 10 in club rugby, for example, and international rugby. Obviously, the Dream Team only takes into consideration international games, and I think that the run of form that Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu's had of late has probably seen him get into that position. But it's going to be interesting to sort of see what the reaction is to the team and what everybody else's preferences would have been and who they think maybe should have made the team ahead of the ones that have been picked. Before we break the team down, please do smash a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel as well. This is the side that has been picked, and I think the biggest part about this is the all South African front row. I mean, it had to happen, didn't it? You can't have the weapon of the scrum that the Springboks do. You can't win matches almost single-handedly with scrum dominance and then not have, the Springbok scrum. What's quite interesting, for example, Thomas du Toit versus Wilco Louw, I think could have been a bit of a toss of the coin, to be honest. I know that Thomas du Toit obviously starts the games, but if we look at the number of minutes they've played, Wilco Louw probably plays as many minutes as a Thomas du Toit, for example, and has been phenomenal at scrum time. I mean, I love the fact Thomas du Toit is getting his flowers. I think it's by far his best year in a Boks jersey, and I think that he's really come good this year, and very good reward. But I think that, ironically, if it wasn't going to be Thomas du Toit, it probably would have been Wilco Louw in second, rather than, for example, a Tyke Furlong, who's just starting prop against, for the British and Irish Lions, the likes of that. But in the front row, I mean, Nche, Malcolm Marx, both nominated for World Player of the Year. Malcolm Marx, obviously the World Player of the Year, was always going to be in the Dream Team. So very cool that South Africa have managed to bag that tight end spot and are in the front row. However, no locks, which is probably about right, given how many locks rather we had throughout the year. So Mario Toje, British and Irish Lions captain, goes in the number 4 jersey. Ty Bergen in the number 5 jersey. I think that's about right. I think Ty Bergen could have been involved in the World Player of the Year, to be fair. I think he's probably the best player. I think he's probably the best player in the world that can cover, 2 positions within the scrum equally. I think that whether he's at 5 or whether he's at 6 or 7 if you're in South Africa, on the flank, at lock, he is so good. So I think it's a very good selection. Pieter-Steph du Toit obviously was always going to make that as well, having been nominated for World Player of the Year. But this is where I think it gets a bit contentious. You've got Tom Curry and you've got Harry Wilson in the number 7 and 8 jerseys. And I think that I think there'd be a lot of talk about the fact that Ardie Savea did not get the nod in the number 7. Probably New Zealand's best player by a country mile, and maybe alongside the likes of Will Jordan. But he's definitely been one of the few shining lights of the All Black side so far this year. Harry Wilson, number 8 jersey. I think there'll be people talking about Ben Earl, for example, and what he's done for England. And from a South African perspective, I think if Rassie had played more games, I think he could have been in with a shout. But so I think that will probably be maybe the contentious one. No Ardie Savea, no Ben Earl potentially could be the chat. If you think about, like, for example, your top teams, for example, I think Caelan Doris missing the British and Irish Lions jersey is probably why why he misses out. You think of, for example, France, but Gregory Aldrin and the likes, they just had to, because they don't take the mid-year series particularly seriously, and they've not had particular alternations. It becomes difficult to select French players because you're basically only now selecting on the Six Nations, which is, first of all, only 5 matches, but also it's a long time ago. And I think there's always a big thing when it comes to recency bias with regards to, you kind of almost forget what happened in the beginning of the year when you're giving out these awards. The night combination, Cameron Roygaard and Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu. I don't understand how Jamison Gibson Park doesn't get into the side. I think Cameron Roygaard's a fantastic player. Jamison Gibson Park, for me, is the best number 9 in the world. I don't think that's even up for debate. I think Ross Rance had a great season this year. Obviously Anton Dupont's had an injury March season, so we haven't seen him and wouldn't have been in the mix. But I think Thomas Williams, if he had played a bit more in the British Irish Lions, so he didn't get that injury, I think is also a big shot for him. I think one of the few world-class Welsh players they've got. I would have had Jamison Gibson Park there, and the fact that there's only one Irish player in the side is probably quite worrying from an Irish perspective. I think they should have had at least 2, because I think it should have been. I would have gone Jabson, Gibson, Park, and then Sacha getting the nod at number 10. I must admit, if I'm Finn Russell, I'll be feeling a little bit aggrieved, probably guilty of not playing for the Springboks, basically, or a better side. Finn Russell, I still think if you're picking a number 10 tomorrow who is the best in the world to play in a side, you'd probably go with Finn Russell. Obviously, it is internationals, but started the 3 matches at for the British and Irish Lions, won that series. Scotland at the moment are very poor. I think he's obviously been a very good player in a bad side, and that's probably what's really counting against him. But I think that it would have been between the 2 of them. Beauden Barrett's not particularly good. George Ford, I think, has come onto his own in the last few games, but maybe hasn't been as consistently playing in the number 10 jersey. Remain Intermax, similar situation, doesn't play enough rugby, for example. You're not going to go with Jack Christ, Sam Prendergast. They didn't even make the British and Irish Lions tour. So for me, it was literally between those 2. I think it was between Sacha and Finn Russell as one of the few constant number 10s. Even Australia, kept changing. Beauden Barrett wasn't playing well, and even Argentina, for example, a couple of different options throughout the year. Lubi Abari was pretty much a shoo-in. I mean, obviously, World Player of the Year, broke the try scoring record. It's an interesting center combination. I like the Leonard Cattell shout. I think that Damien Leonard could have been there with a shout. I think that he did have a very solid year. A lot of people talked about Geordie Barrett. I do think Leonard Cattell's been better than Geordie Barrett. I think Leonard Cattell's been Australia's best player. He's been a very good player in a very poor Australian side, and I like the fact that he's getting that recognition. I don't think there are too many other players. Bundy Aki wasn't phenomenal this year, for example. When you think of your sort of top inside centers, France had a different inside center quite consistently. I think that Tommaso Nche, for example, had a phenomenal Six Nations last year. This year hasn't quite hit those sort of heights that we've seen previously. So I think that Leonard Cattell's a good shot. Hugh Jones at 13, I also don't mind it, actually, to be honest. I think that you look again at the different sort of teams and your 13s, for example, and who your constants, Gael Fiku played a lot for France this year, but I don't think it was his best year. Jesse Real, Kane and Moody kind of swapped in between. I don't think there was that much consistency. I think Hugh Jones was probably the most consistent number 13 throughout the year. So I think the center combination is pretty spot on, to be fair. Cheslin Kolbe in the number 14 jersey. Lots of people talk about Tommy Freeman and the season he had in an England jersey. There's, I think there's a lot of talk, to be fair, that Will Jordan's more of a wing than fullback. I think he started fullback a couple of times and had to move to the wing quite a lot. Definitely probably played more minutes at wing, but this is obviously a way of getting both a Cheslin Kolbe as well as a Will Jordan into the side over there. Again, I don't think there's besides maybe a Tommy Freeman, I don't think, your Mac Hansons, your James Lowes for Ireland, don't think have been phenomenal this year. Cheslin Kolbe, to be fair, I don't think it's actually been Cheslin Kolbe's best year. Is he probably the best number 14 in the world? Yeah, potentially you can make an argument for that. And then Will Jordan at 15. I'll tell you what, I think I would like to have seen him play a bit more for British and Irish Lions. I think Blake Kinghorn could have had a big shot for that, to be perfectly honest. Will Jordan at 15 didn't play as much as he would have liked, but it probably is, on form right now, the best 50. I think Damien Williams, again, if he had played more than the year, could have been in with a shout. Thomas Ramos, I think, is probably the best 15 in the world. Again, didn't play the mid-year series, for example. And I think that continues to count against the French. I think if right now we're picking, who do you think is the best 15 in the world? I'd probably go Thomas Ramos. Will Jordan probably be up there as well, though. So, yeah, it's an interesting side. A lot to pick apart. What do you think? What changes would you potentially make? Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? And let me know what your dream team would be down in the comments below. From a second perspective, great to see so many players recognized. Long may we continue to dominate this team, because that means you're dominating the world. And from that point of view, I think it's a pretty fair reflection. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.